Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Shamsharada Nalalidaloka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam 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 Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Gita Vaditra Madhyam Romanchakam Pasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanara Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Joktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavad Prasadam Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sanghan Chaturvidashi Bhagavad Prasada Satana Triptan Kridaiva Triptin Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shirarikama Gavayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Shirarikama Madhura Leela Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Ne kunja yuno Rati Keli Siddhai Jajali Vir Jukti Apekshaniya Nikunja Yono Rati Keli Siddhai Jajali Vir Jukti Tatrati daksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Sakchadhari Dena Samasta Shashre Uktastathabha Gataiva Sadhave Sakchadhari Dena Shashre Uktastathabha Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Vande Guru Shri Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Sado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yayam Stubam Tasya Yashastrin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Jayam Stubam Tasya Yasastin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatya Shatarine Namaste Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hariyaraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Kesavaya Nama Gopal Govindara Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhava, Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande, Haribo. Jai Vishwapar Param Saprabhajagacharya, Astuttara Sarashishimad. Iskon Pratishta, Viviti Samstapakacharya, Vaishnava Siramani, Gaura Priya Jana Krishna, Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana, His Divine Grace, Abhacharvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai, Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patiti Udhari Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakti Raghunath, Shri Jaiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Jayananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन सुमन गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृणावतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जग की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। Brihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopukdina Radha Kund Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai. The Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Shri Maya Purnavadvip Eka Chakra Dham Ki Jai. Parama Karuna Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottama Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Srimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kanishingare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Bolo Shri Mati Radharani Ki Jai. Shamavita Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glories to these humble bodies. All glories to these humble bodies. All glories to these humble bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Guru.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlad Lad Dai.
Prahlad Lad Dai.
Hiranyakashi Purvasaha.
Hiranyakashi Purvasaha. Silatanka Nakalai.
Narsinga.
Ita Nrsinga Parata Nrsinga.
Yato yato yami tato Narsinga.
Jato jato jami tato Nrsinga.
Vahe Narsinga, Hridaye Narsinga.
Vahe Nrsinga, Hridaye Nrsinga.
Narsingham Dim Sharanam Prabhude.
Nrsingamadin Sharana Prabhade.
Savakar Kamalavare Namah Adbhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Vringa.
Tabakara Kamala Bade Naka Adbhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabinga Kesabadrita Narari Ropa Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha. Jayane Singare, Jayane Singare, Singare, Jayane Singare. Jai Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jai Jaya Gurudev. Jai. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Satyabhatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Satyabhatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradevi Satyabhatai Namo Namaha. जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की। First, Tulsi, first.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Ye Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavam Heya Vilase
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Ye Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavam Heya Vilase
Je tomar sharan loy Tara vancha purna hoy
Jai Tomara Sharanala Tara Vancha Puna
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavanavasi
Tumi Kripa Kore Karatare Vrindavanavasi
Moraye Abhilas Vilas kunja diyovas
Morai Avila Vilas Kunde Diyava
Nayane haribo sada Yugala ruparashi
Aminayane Reva Sada Jugala Ruparasi
Ye nivedana Sakiranugata koro
Eni Vedanadhara Sakirayano Gatakara
Seva adhikara diye Koro nijadasi
Sevayane Kara Diye Karani Jadasi
Dina Krishna dase ko Ye namora ho
Dina Krishna Daseka Dayena Mara
Shri Radha Govinda preme Sadayena bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi
Shri Radha Govinda preme सदाय न भासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदाय न भासी
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Vrinde Devi Jaya Vrinde Devi
Jaya Vrinde
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol
Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Shri Vrindayi Tulasi Devi Priyaye Ke Saba Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradeve Satya Bhatyay Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyaye Ke Saba Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradeve Satya Chevatyaya Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradideve Satyavataya Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shishi Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes short to be his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him. My desire that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg to make me a follower of Kavidances of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always fame in love of Shishi Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. So let's consider the 10 offenses against the chanting of the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offered in Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikyastakam ki jai. Chaito Darpanamajanam Bhavamada Vagninivapanam Shreyakariva Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Paramparam Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Ita Drushitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrishamya Jani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam vajagarishakamaye mama janmani janmanishari bhavatar bhakti raituki tvai ainandatanu kinkaram paditam mam visame bhavam buddho Kripaya tava pada pankaja stita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galara shrudharaya Vadanam gadagadharudhaya gira Kulakairinchitam papukada Tavanamagrahane bhavisyati Yogaitam nimishena Chakshusha pravasaitam Sunya itam jagata sarvam Govinda virayena me Asli shava padaratam pinashtumam Adarshanaar marmahatam karotuva Jata tata vidadhatu lampato Mat pranatastu saivana para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratisya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunnavadi Vatsyatyari Shatarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads rays in the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharajananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some or other I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it should remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam ki jai. Shri Guru Shri Guru Vandan Mangala Charan ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jota Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatavintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakam Cha Namah Vishnu Padayo Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devem Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Patsatyari Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhana Videvi Deitaya Kripabdvaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjo Jala Premadhya Shri Rupa Nuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murthaye Ninatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pusidanta Dvantaharine Namagura Kishoraya Sakchavera Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambhode Parambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchit Ananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumetsvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarva Bhuma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvyayivacha Paritanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna prema pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaura Tvishe namaha Panchatattvamakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Avataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratopangor Mama Manda Matirgatir Masarvasva Padambujo Radha Madanamona Divyarvindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmara Nagara Shingasanastu Shmaradha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtali Visheva Manushmarami Shmanra Sarasaram Devam Shvato Tatastita Karshan Venu Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shriestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrusabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Pranam Mangal Charan Ki Jai Gaura Pramanande Hari Bol. Let's say Hare Krishna 3 times to welcome His Holiness Hari Vilas Maharaj. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. His Holiness Hari Vilas Maharaj Ki Jai. Gaura Pramanande.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharya Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Satarani. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol Hari Bol. So thank you very much for welcoming me back. I feel very blessed to be back here. This is a wonderful community and a wonderful place to practice Krishna consciousness, a wonderful temple. And this year, hopefully, by Krishna's mercy, will be another very, very successful year for Krishna consciousness. More and more, this country is falling apart, and there's a lot of problems, and it's all unnecessary. It's due to ignorance. But most people are so anchored in ignorance that they just can't figure out why there's so much suffering, and people are suffering terribly. So we have a mission to help as many people as possible who want to be helped. Not everybody wants to be helped. That's the problem. But those who want to be helped, and there are many people like that are looking for solutions to all the suffering that they're going through, and all the difficulties that they're experiencing, and all the anxieties they have about the future. Those persons are waiting for you to come and talk to them, give them some prasadam, and comfort them by giving them genuine knowledge of what is true and what is not true. Today there's many more things that are not true that people believe, and that's the cause of their unnecessary suffering. So today I'm going to speak about what it means to practice pure Krishna consciousness. And it's a wonderful subject because it's the goal of what we're doing by chanting Hare Krishna and practicing the regulative principles, the 4 things we should never do, the 4 things we should always do. And this process has been made very easy by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, taking into account how difficult it is in this age to be Krishna conscious. So because people are unnecessarily suffering due to lack of knowledge, it's not that the knowledge is lacking, it's the knowledge that's being taught to them is false. That's what's causing the problem. In the name of knowledge, schools, universities, newspapers, movies, and books are all professing things that are false and self-destructive. And people are going for it. And because of that, they suffer terribly, unnecessarily, and become very bitter and angry. And now it's become very evident that Christianity is on a major downfall in the United States, especially in Europe and England. And less and less people believe in God. So this is the best time for a preacher. Almost everyone you meet now is confused and looking for some way out of this terrible type of confusion of what is true and what is not true. So, in the very nice verse in the 3rd chapter, 3rd verse of the Bhagavad Gita, that says, Lokesmin dvi vida nista puru prokta mayanaga, and so forth. Jnana yogena samgyat nam karma yogena yoginam. So this verse says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are 2 classes of people who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. So here this verse is very important if we want to understand the problem. The problem is most people are trying to understand what is the purpose of life, who they are, where they came from, where they are now, where they want to get to, what is the goal of life, by empirical or empiricism. Now, what is empiricism? It is the fanatical, let's say, attempt to understand reality with the senses. Senses meaning the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, the mind, and intelligence. Now, it's already been explained by Krishna 5,000 years ago that it's impossible to understand the truth of life simply by empirical knowledge, simply by using the senses, the mind and the intelligence. Why? Well, although the senses, and there are 5 senses: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and then there's 5 objects of the senses, which is seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling, or seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and okay, there's one more. I'm missing it. The eyes, the ears, smelling, right? Okay, so there are 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. That's the eyes, the ears, the tongues, the nose, the skin. And then there's 5 objects of the senses: seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. And then there are the 5 working senses, which is the arms, the legs, the tongue, the genital, and the anus. And then there are the 5 Mahabhutas, or earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then above that, there's the subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and ego. So this is what you would call Sankhya Yoga, the process of analyzing the body and trying to understand who we actually are. Well, besides these 23 elements, and the 24th element is the pradhana, or the subtle accumulation of everything. Therefore, beyond this is the soul, and beyond that is the super soul. Now, empiricism will reject the existence of the soul and the super soul. They say everything is only material. So right there is the problem, that is, that the empirical process, using only the senses, will leave out the most important aspects of the living entity, the soul, and Krishna, the super soul, is present in everyone's heart. Besides that, there's a problem. The problem is we make mistakes. We are easily illusioned. Our senses are imperfect. And we have a cheating propensity. So that further disqualifies us. Then there's other problems. We're controlled. Once we reject Krishna and try and come to this material world to try and be a competitor of Krishna for sense gratification, we become immediately conditioned by the 3 modes of material nature: sattva, rajas, and tamas, or goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, when people who are primarily influenced by passion and ignorance, they have absolutely 0 chance to understand something spiritual. And unfortunately, 99.9% of all the human beings in this world are functioning under the influence of these supernatural forces of rajas and tamas, or lust and ignorance. Now, very few people are situated in the mode of goodness, but the mode of goodness has a problem also. But at least when one is situated in the mode of goodness, primarily, they can begin to understand about spiritual life. So it's the stepping stone to spiritual life. But it has its problems also, because people become conditioned by well-being, because they become knowledgeable. They usually have success materially, and they develop a certain type of pride of having accumulated assets and knowledge, and therefore they think they've reached the real goal of life, but they haven't. Therefore, they also stay in the cycle of birth and death. So, but if one has the good opportunity and the good fortune to meet bona fide gurus, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, they have a chance to be promoted to transcendental goodness. And then all their problems are solved. So that the level of transcendental goodness permits them to understand realistically their relationship with God. And Prabhupada has explained that there are two goals in Krishna consciousness. One is to understand the science of God, and two is to develop pure love and devotion for God. So, here we see that almost everyone is going to be excluded from this very wonderful level of transcendental goodness because of bad association. Now, what does that mean? It's associating with people who are addicted to sense gratification, who regularly break the 4 things one should never do, which is meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication, and who are convinced that the truth can be understood by empiricism and speculation. So, how can you understand the truth? By empiricism, because here it says that there are 2 types of people. The one who classes of people try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. So people who want to understand Krishna and the truth by devotional service, they have a very good chance of succeeding. And people who want to understand the truth by empirical knowledge and speculation, they do not have a good chance. It may be possible if they meet a bona fide spiritual master, but most of the time they don't, and therefore they cannot either. And this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Daivihi sagunamai mama maya dharatya mam eviya prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. That is the 7th chapter, 14th verse, that says that it is impossible to overcome the material nature by empiricism and speculation. It is impossible. Why? Because the spiritual nature is spiritual. The material nature is spiritual. It is the inferior spiritual energy of Krishna. Therefore, you cannot overcome this energy by speculation or just studying matter. Because reality is made up of matter and spirit. So, if you only study matter, you're only going to understand 1/4 of reality. Therefore, there's a verse that says in the 7th chapter, 2nd verse, which says, Jnanam teham savijnanam, which means idam vaksyam yasesataha yajgatva nihabhyuho nyajgatavyam avasisyate. It says that, hey Arjuna, now I shall declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So here Krishna is clearly saying that there is phenomenal knowledge, which means everything you can see, and there's also numinous knowledge, everything you can't see but exists. And there are even more things that we can't see that actually exist. Like, for example, electromagnetic waves. You don't see them. I don't see them. But you pick them up with your cell phone, television, and radio, and computers, and so forth. So, besides the electromagnetic waves, there are many other energies that have never been discovered yet by the scientists. And therefore, if you just depend on material science, you will not be able to go beyond 1/4 of reality. And how can you understand what is reality if you're only studying 1/4 of it? Okay. And then the other thing is that people try to do things that are impossible to achieve. And that's because of the false propaganda of the so-called scientists and philosophers. They think they can eventually prolong life in this body and also maybe even attain immortality, or at least they will have the option of being immortal or the option of dying. So this is all nonsense. The laws of material nature forbid such a thing. Everyone is going to get old, get sick, and die. But yet they're spending millions of dollars and millions of hours trying to solve the riddle of birth and death. Now, the wheel was invented many, many years ago. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In the same way, when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, the first time 120 million years ago, the second time over 2 million years ago, the third time 2 million years ago, and the fourth time to Arjuna 5,000 years ago, each time it was exactly the same Bhagavad Gita. It didn't change. And the Bhagavad Gita is a quintessential text of how to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or reinvent something that's already been invented and perfected. But do people read Bhagavad Gita and understand that it's all about how you can be easily liberated from the cycle of birth and death? No. And they love to speculate about what Bhagavad Gita is, and because of that, they unfortunately remain misfortunate and unnecessarily suffer. So, there is knowledge that's phenomenal, and there's knowledge that is numinous or unseen. And there are two classes of people that want to understand the self: those who use empirical knowledge, that is only what you can see with your senses, and speculation to understand, which means it's almost zero chance of understanding anything substantive. And secondly, there are people who directly take the Krishna consciousness, and they will understand very easily and directly their relationship with Krishna and be able to go back to Godhead. Okay, so in the purport to this verse, third chapter, third verse, it says, the ultimate goal in life is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Where is that stated? Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavamam prapadyante vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabhaha, which says, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So, it is possible to understand Krishna if you have the association of bona fide gurus. It is impossible if you avoid the association of bona fide gurus. It is possible to easily understand Krishna if you take directly to Krishna consciousness. But it's virtually impossible if you use empirical knowledge and speculation. Okay, so then it says, the whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super-self. In other words, the most important relationship we can have is our relationship with Krishna, because that will tell us who we actually are. Our relationship to other people who are confused like we are is not going to help. It's going to help you get deeper into ignorance, but it's not going to help you to come out of ignorance and understand your relationship with Krishna. So, right from the beginning of life, children should be taught to develop a real relationship with Krishna. And this should continue throughout life. When you understand your relationship with Krishna, then you understand who you really are. Because, what does that mean? We are not this body. At no time are we this body. But almost everyone is identifying with the body. There's such a thing as identity politics. The government of the United States and other governments, they try and make you convinced that you are the body. You are American, or you are Ukrainian, or you are Russian, or you are white, or you are black, or you are from North Africa, or you're from South Africa. One time I met this man, and I said, "Where do you live?" He said, "I live in the north." I said, "Really? Is that like, Denmark or Norwegian or where?" He said, "No, North Africa." So that was really funny because he was pretending to be something. Well, he was telling the truth, but I misunderstood what he was saying. Yeah, so everyone is identifying with the body. Now, the definition of an illusion is to believe something that was never true at any time. So the first and foremost thing that people believe that was never true at any time is, I am this body. So therefore, how will they understand anything about their relationship with Krishna? 0, 0, 0. All zeros. They will never understand anything. So they need to hear from Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, spoken by genuine devotees, to understand that the most significant relationship they can have in this life, by which they can actually understand who they are, where they came from, where they are now, and where they want, and where they should go, back to Godhead, is by developing their relationship with Krishna. Now, it says the whole process to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self or Krishna. The indirect process is philosophical speculation by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. Notice the word may. That means it's not guaranteed. And for most people, they're going to fail. So how is it that they may? It's only if they come in contact with genuine devotees. If they avoid the contact with genuine devotees and associate only with the speculators, they will never come to understand the relationship with Krishna. And then it says, and the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So what is the philosophical process of purifying the senses? It's speculation, and it's not going to be very easy to arrive at understanding who we are. And it's not going to be possible to really purify the senses. Our senses are the eyes, ears, the tongue, the nose, and the skin, and the mind and intelligence, and the ego. So, in material life, everyone is engaged in contaminating the senses through sense gratification of the body and exploiting of others. Whereas the process of Krishna consciousness is purifying the senses. So there's a big difference between contaminating the senses and purifying the senses. Now, how do you purify the senses? You engage them in Krishna's service. Therefore, we chant Hare Krishna. We bathe 2 or 3 times a day. We put on clean clothes. We get up early. We go to sleep early and wake up early and come to Mangala Aarti and the morning program and listen to classes. And we go on Sankirtan and we eat only Mahaprasadam. And we associate with good devotees, not with loose devotees who don't strictly follow all the principles. And then that means we're in a constant process of self-purification. But if we're mixed, associating with people who are sense gratifiers and then associating somewhat with devotees, that's like putting water on the fire with one hand and adding gasoline with the other. It's going to be a failure. It's not going to succeed. We have to give up the association of non-devotees. Now that doesn't mean we're mean or we ignore people. No, we have more contact with people than normal people do because we go out on Sankirtan. If you don't go out on Sankirtan, of course, you miss the greatest opportunity for understanding Krishna consciousness. But if you go on Sankirtan, like today there's Sankirtan, you get an optimal chance to understand how to preach and how to connect with people. And you will eventually learn how to connect with every person, whether they're a believer or a non-believer. And that happens by practical experience of going out on Sankirtan and trying to talk to people and convince them that God does exist, and it's rather easy to be free from suffering if they just accept 4 principles that we should never do and 4 things that we should always do. That's how simple it is. It's not complicated. So it says, so to purify the senses by a philosophical process, you don't have much chance of succeeding. There is a possibility, but again, it depends if you meet a bona fide devotee. If you don't, there's very little chance. But to purify the senses by the direct method of devotional service is simultaneously easy and sublime. So now further, in the 2nd chapter, 61st verse of Bhagavad Gita, it says, Tani sarvani samyanya yukta asitamat paran vasehi yasyanindriyani tasya pragna pratistita. One who restrains his or her senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, meaning Krishna, is known as a person of steady intelligence. So this is the 2nd chapter, 61st verse. Very important verse, because it shows the value of learning to control our senses. What are the senses? The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, the mind, intelligence, and the ego. So therefore, we should always be in contact with Krishna. That's called controlling the senses, and not deviate to other people or subjects. Now, how can you do that? Well, we can learn from the materialists. There are materialists that focus 24 hours a day on having sense gratification. They still function in society, but their mind is always on a one track, that is, how to have maximum sense gratification. There are other people always thinking about sports, who won this game, or who won that game, or this basketball game, or the football game, or soccer, or whatever. So they're always focusing on sports, but yet they still function in society. Then there are other people always concerned about the stock market. Did it go up today, or did it come down? And they still function. They still have families. They go to work. They have some exercise, or they go on vacation. But their mind is one track, that is the stock market. So we can learn from them that it's possible to keep your mind always on Krishna, because their minds are always on one thing, usually, that is sense gratification. And our mind should be focused on sense purification. That's the difference. Sense gratification and sense purification. So gratifying the senses, we go deeper into ignorance. Purifying the senses, we come closer and closer to Krishna. So it says, the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness. And it's clearly explained in this verse, 2nd chapter, 61st verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarisha. And Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride, and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, Ambarisha, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, Durvasa, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications, as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, 4th chapter, 18th to 20th verse. Now this is a very important purport to understand. It's explaining how you can control your mind and senses, how you can be always successful spiritually, not necessarily successful materially, because in material, let's say, controversies, there's going to be a winner and a loser. But in spiritual life, everybody's a winner. There's no loser. That's the difference. On the one hand, there's winners and losers. That's going on all the time now. On the other hand, there is always a winner for everyone. It's just like when the tide comes up, all the boats go up. So that is Krishna consciousness. Everybody makes spiritual progress in Krishna consciousness. Whereas in a difficult situation where there's two people with different purposes in life, there's going to be a winner and a loser. And therefore, the losers get really upset and the winners become proud. So therefore it says, this Durvasa Muni, he purposely picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarisha. Why? Well, because he became unnecessarily angry because of pride, and therefore could not check his senses, couldn't control his mind, intelligence, etc. So here we see that the first two principles of knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita are amanidvam and adamidvam. Amanidvam means humility, and adamidvam means freedom from false pride. Now, what does it mean by false pride? Here we have a material body that's subject to birth, old age, disease, and death, and we're identifying with this very, very, let's say, imperfect body, and because of that, we waste our time eating, sleeping, mating, and defending like animals, and eventually go straight forward to old age, disease, and death, and then we have to start all over again because we have no knowledge. We didn't spend any time understanding our relationship with God and having an association with genuine devotees. So, although Durvasa Muni was a Mahayogi, he had mystical powers, he was a very powerful person, but still he was not free from false pride, and because of that he became unnecessarily angry and tried basically to kill Ambarish Maharaj. But Ambarish Maharaj, who was not a powerful yogi as Durvasa Muni, but a powerful devotee, he tolerated all the sages' injustices, and he tolerated silently. He didn't protest. And therefore, he emerged victorious because he was protected by Krishna. Now, you might like this, you might not like it. And so, what? You mean I got just to remain quiet and someone insults me or someone attacks me, I don't do anything? Attacking is different than insulting. So if someone attacks you physically, you have a right to protect yourself. But if someone tries to malign you, you should be not angry or vindictive. You can tolerate it because it's not you that's being insulted. It's the false ego that's being insulted. You are different than the false ego. You have an eternal soul. Nothing can touch the soul. But the false ego can be easily hurt. So, the false ego is something false. That's why it's called false ego. Therefore, Ambarish Maharaj, although Durvasa Muni did try and kill him, he was protected by Krishna, one. And secondly, he had no false pride and he had no anger. He was a well-wisher of his enemy. He was praying for him. And he fasted also, hoping that Durvasa Muni would be able to, let's say, control himself and come to his senses. So here we see that Ambarish Maharaj was much more of a real yogi than Durvasa Muni. Now, how did he have such composure and self-control? Well, this is explained. This is explained where it says he was able to control the following things in his life. He fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So, by meditating humbly as the humble servant of Krishna and meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord and meditating on service to the Lord, that's number one. Number two, he engaged his words in describing the qualities of the Lord and the abode of the Lord. So he didn't talk nonsense. He was always talking about Krishna and from bona fide scriptural descriptions of who Krishna is and his wonderful qualities. And number three, he used his hands to clean the temple of the Lord. And number four, he used his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. Number five, he used his eyes in seeing the deity of the Lord, like in the temple, like we do every day. And he used his body in touching the body of the devotees. In other words, he offered service to the devotees. They might want a massage, or they might need some help in some way or other. And number seven, he used his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. Number eight, he used his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered at the feet of the Lord. And number nine, he used his legs in going to holy places where the Lord's temple is situated. And he used his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord and his desires, to fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a matpara devotee of the Lord. Now, what does matpara mean? Someone who is in a direct relationship with Krishna. So this is how Ambarish Maharaj was able to control himself, and Durvasa Muni was not able to control himself because he wasn't doing what Ambarish Maharaj did. He was puffed up by false pride, and because of that he couldn't control his anger, and then he committed all kinds of sinful acts. So we can learn from this one verse, this second chapter, Bhagavad Gita, 61st verse, how to control ourselves, how to rise above mundane thoughts and actions and become actually a saintly person. It means that we should be fully involved in remembering and serving Krishna under the tutelage of genuine spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus. Okay. So, therefore, another purport, Prabhupada explains, for sense enjoyment, we have now this material body, and you might call it an Indian body, or an American body, or a white body, or a black body, or a yellow body, or this body or that body. But Prabhupada says, but you have to change this body. We are eternal souls, and we're never born and we never die. the soul does not take birth, and we are eternal, and the soul never dies. We simply change the body, just like we are changing our bodies right now. First, in the mother's womb, we had a very small body. Then it grows, and we come out, and it continues growing. But it's not exactly growing, it's changing. The child is changing his body from a baby to a boy, from a boy to a youth, and from a youth to becoming an adult, etc. And therefore, we have this experience of our changing body. We can remember when we were a child, or you had a boy's body or a girl's body, but the body is no longer existing, but you are existing. In other words, those previous bodies are no longer existing. They died. But you're still existing and experiencing more changes of the body. Therefore, the conclusion is that when the body will be no more fit for existing, we shall have to accept another body. This is called Dehantara Prapti. So we have to change. That is nature's law. Yeah, can you stop the changes of the body? No, you can't stop it. Can you stop getting old and sick and dying? No, you can't stop it. These things are forced on us. These are laws of nature, and you cannot go against these laws of nature. You have no way of going against them. Although so many idiots, scientists, and philosophers are claiming, oh, we can overcome all this. But they die just like everybody else and fail in all their attempts to control nature. So, therefore, this belief in the real nature of the human being, which is spiritual, our soul is witnessing all the changes of the body. But the soul doesn't change. Therefore, if we just concentrate on the body and ignore the soul, we are a complete failure in life. If we focus on the soul and maintain the body for serving the purpose of the soul, then we'll be a success in this life. So it says, Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatparat mena nirmalam Rishikena Rishikeshas Sevanam Bhakti Uchyate. This means that we have to clear ourselves of all false designations. What are these false designations? They're all bodily identifications. I am a member of this race or ethnicity or country, etc. All these identifications of the body are false. The only identification is Jivera Swarupahaya Nityera Krishna Das. What is the real position or what is the real essence of the human being? He's the eternal, or she is the eternal servant of Krishna. That's who we really are. Now, everybody is a servant because that is our dharma. If we don't have anybody to serve, we buy a dog or a cat. We serve them. But usually, there's a husband, he serves his wife and children. There's a wife, she serves her husband and children. And then husband goes to work, he serves the team leader or the boss. And then the husband has to pay taxes, he's serving the government. Everybody's a servant. They're serving someone. And if you don't have anyone to serve, you get, like I said, a dog or a cat and serve them. However, and we can't stop serving. And if we're like a hermit, then we serve our own lust, anger, and greed. Right? So we're always going to be a servant of something or someone. However, if we decide and voluntarily serve Krishna, then we can understand who we really are and what is the real goal of life. The real goal of life is to be free of all these impositions on us: birth, death, old age, and disease, the three forms of suffering, suffering of this body, suffering caused by other bodies, suffering caused by universal forces such as earthquakes. Just look what just happened in Turkey. So far, there are 43,000 people died in 1 hour because 2 earthquakes. Both earthquakes only lasted hardly a minute. So in 2 minutes, 43,000 people so far. There's probably going to be a lot more still. So that can happen anytime and anywhere. No one can overcome the laws of nature. Now, why did so many people die so quickly? Obviously, they've been enmeshed in ignorance and engaging in all kinds of sinful activities. They're not the only ones. There's tragedies taking place all over the world today. And there's, in America, every day, people killing other people and engaging in all kinds of very sinful activities. And America is a very violent place. And you can see it. And there's a breakdown of respect. People don't respect, not all people respect the police. Not all people respect the government. Some people are very prone to murdering other people. So, you know, the deterioration of society, the deterioration is causing havoc in this country right now. People are worried. So here it says, Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam. This means that we have to clear ourselves of false designations. What is that designation? Everyone is thinking, I'm American, I am Indian, I am European, I am Australian, I am cat, I am dog, I am this, I am that. Bodily identification. We have to cleanse this bodily conception of life. That I am not this body. Aham brahmasmi. I am a pure spirit soul. This we have to realize. Then there will be no distinction that here is an American, here is an Australian, here is a Hindu, here is a Muslim, here's a tree, here is this, here is that. No, pandita samadarshina. We have to have equal vision to see all people as spirit souls, not the body. And to notice also that in the body, there are 2 souls. There's your individual soul, and there's Krishna, the supreme soul. Therefore, everyone is a walking, talking temple of God. And they should be respected as such. This is real vision. This is called equal vision. We see the equality of everyone on the spiritual platform. Materially, there are differences. There are big people, there are small people. There are this type of person, there's that type of person. But on the spiritual level, we are all the same. We are all the servants of God. And we all have a relationship with Krishna. And Krishna is present in our heart. So he's the closest person to us. So unless we come to this equal vision, as it says, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmanika Vihastine Sunichaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. We have to get rid of these false identifications, which in Sanskrit are called sarvapadis, identifying with the body, identifying with material things. And we have to, secondly, develop this equal vision where we see that the primary quality of everything is Krishna, because he's present in every atom of the universe and he's present in the heart of every living entity. And the secondary quality is the jiva, your soul, my soul. These are the 2 most important things to see if you want to have equal vision. If you only see the body, then you get all confused and you begin to develop prejudices. If you see the soul and its relationship with Krishna, who's present in the heart of every living entity and in every atom of the universe, then you develop equal vision. So this has to be taught to kids. Are they teaching anything like this in school? Absolutely not. So therefore, there's very little chance that kids will develop equal vision and neutrality. What is neutrality? That is, whether you're successful or not successful materially, Your determination to continue in Krishna consciousness is not affected. You continue serving Krishna without any hesitation in all circumstances. So then you have neutrality. You don't have friends and enemies. You see everyone as a servant of Krishna. So, therefore, in the 3rd chapter, 11th verse, it explains the solution to all problems. The problems are birth, death, old age, and disease. Those are the real problems. So, in ancient times, India was the richest country in the world. 1,000 years ago, even 500 years ago, it was the richest country in the world. That's why it was invaded so much by Alexander the Great and the Persians and the Mughals and the Afghanis. They kept raiding and killing and forcibly making people change their religion, destroying. They destroyed up to 36 to 40,000 temples. And recently, I've been trying to convince people that there should be reparations for this. The Muslims should pay reparations to the Bharatiyas. If you look what happened. I mean, the Germans killed so many gypsies and so many communists and so many, let's say, people with physical debilities and so many Jews. The government has been paying reparations. The Muslims destroyed 36,000 to 40,000 temples. They should pay reparations for that. What do you think, Vidya? Huh? You don't think there's a chance that they will pay reparations? All the Muslims in India, and if they don't pay, they should move out. Just like now, trying to force people to pay reparations to the descendants of slaves, because they were, exploited unnecessarily. So, if I destroy your house, shouldn't I pay for it eventually? If people destroyed 36,000 to 40,000 temples, they should pay for it. Right. Not that we're going to destroy any mosques, but we should rebuild each one of those temples. Yes. What? Well, somebody's got to pay for it, so you could also force the governments to pay for it. The Persians, the Greeks, the Afghanis, and the Mughals, and the British. I forgot the British. They should also pay. Anyway, that's just an idea. Whenever I said this somewhere, people really said, "Yeah, that's right. They should pay. Why they get away with such a thing?" So then the governments should pay for it then. Okay, so we'll stop right there. This is a big subject. We'll continue tomorrow. Are there any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, welcome back. We're all very happy to
Hare
have
Krishna.
classes again in the temple.
Yeah.
Regarding the Turkey earthquake, Maharaj, when something like that happens, I think one of the things is if there's a lot of people in ignorance, they suffer, they die. But when something like that happens, there might be devotees also in that area who also suffer. I mean, they also go through pain. But how do we explain that those kind of circumstances happening to devotees?
Well, we don't know that there are any devotees in Syria and Turkey. There are devotees in Turkey, but there's not many. There's, I would say, about 150, 200 devotees in Turkey. There might be one or two devotees in Syria, but this is Syria, not where the government is in control, but where the people who are against the government. They're in northern Syria, where the earthquake took place. And they're suffering terribly, those people, because not only they're suffering because of the war, but now they're suffering because of the earthquake. And then the people in Turkey, it was a part of Turkey where there's the government was not very favorable to them, because there are a lot of Kurds and Syrians and some religious people who are not necessarily Muslims. So it's a area that the government was sort of ignoring. So anyway, obviously the people have accumulated some really bad karma in those areas. Now, Turkey has a whole bunch of fault lines running through it. The same type of devastating earthquake could happen in Istanbul, because it's directly on the fault line. It hasn't happened so far. And a lot of reasons why so many people died in this particular earthquake is because of cheating by the construction companies that use very low-grade materials. That's why the whole buildings collapsed, right? Because they didn't follow the rules and regulations. There was only one city, one town, that did not have hardly any damage at all. And the mayor in that town refused to give permits to companies that were not going to follow all the rules and regulations for retrofitting, making the buildings retrofitted for withstanding at least a 7 or 8, let's say, earthquake. His city, nobody died. Right? It's not a big city, but it was a big town. Not one person died, and hardly any buildings were damaged. Or if there was damage, it was minimal damage. So we see that there was massive, let's say, fraud by the government, who permitted people in construction companies to build buildings that did not follow all the rules and regulations that they have, because they had a devastating earthquake in 1999 also, and that's when they established all these what you would call retrofitting principles for building new buildings. But they waived those, let's say, codes for many of the buildings that were built. So you got 6,000 buildings that collapsed. That's a lot of buildings, and they were multi-stories, like 8 stories, 10-story buildings. So they're full of people in these apartments, and that's why you have so many dead people, right? When you have 300, 400, 500, 600 people living in one building and it collapses, you're going to have a lot of deaths. So there are at least 43,000 right now, but it'll probably go up above 50,000. Yeah, it's increasing every day. The more they dig, the more they find dead people and a few living people. So it's a huge tragedy, and it's due mainly to the government, because they waived their own rules just in order to build all these buildings make people believe that, they've done something really wonderful, right? But actually, it was a disaster. They should throw their leader out, Erdogan. He's a nonsense guy. But anyway, there are a lot of nonsense people in this world. So this happens in third world countries where they don't follow all the rules because of bribes and bakshish. Yeah. So, and therefore, you see, it's very important. Well, it's not normal for people living in high rises. It's better to live in villages, right, where you have a building, not these big buildings, because they're especially, everybody knows there's so many fault lines in Turkey, just like there are fault lines, in the west of the United States. So they have them here also in Seattle area. I remember when there was an earthquake here, and everything was shaking. It was like very dangerous. I was in San Francisco when that big earthquake took place. I saw the roof of our temple go up and come down. It was the most scary thing. But our temple was actually, that building was built in 1952, it was retrofitted for earthquakes. Therefore, and they had a rule. They were coming in, and after the earthquake, the city of Berkeley was sending engineers to look at all the buildings, and if they saw that there was some kind of damage or fault in it, they would force you to retrofit the whole building, which would cost hundreds and thousands of dollars. Right? Fortunately, our temple was retrofitted when it was built, way back in 1952. So, people know that there are many fault lines in California and the West Coast. So it could happen here also. There's no guarantee it won't happen here. That's why it's better just to have simple homes, right? Not these high rises like they have in India. India has gigantic high-rise buildings now everywhere, in all the big cities. And the worst is Hyderabad. The gigantic buildings, they're all modern buildings. I'm sure, I think they follow the codes, but I don't know. So, answer your question, there are hardly any devotees in that area where there was that earthquake. There might be a few, very few. There might be some pious people in those areas, and they might be the ones that didn't die. But look, 46,000 people, that's a huge number. Right? In a matter of, basically in a matter of 2 minutes. Right? Okay, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. And we'll continue. Today is Shivaratri, right? So we'll probably have another class a little later on in the morning about Lord Shiva. Haribol. Okay, so who wants to sing? You want to sing? You want to sing? You don't have it, huh? No, there it is, there it is, there it is.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mui Savadhana Mate
Savadana
যাহারা প্রসাদে ভাই এ ভাবা তরিয়া যায়
Janar Prasade Bhai Ebhavatoriya Jai
কৃষ্ণ প্রাপ্তি হয় যাহা হইতে
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
গুরু মুখ পদ্মা বাক্য চিতেতে করিয়া ক্যা
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Koriya Kya
আরে না করি হো মানে আশা
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
শ্রী গুরু চরণে রতি এই সে উত্তম গতি
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
যে প্রসাদে পুরে সর্বা আশা
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Sa
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
Sudan Dilaje Janme Janme Prabhu Se
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
Divye Gyani De Prakashito
प्रेमा भक्ति जहा होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते
Ema Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasajate
प्रेमा भक्ति जहा होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते
Ema Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasajate
वेद ज्ञान जहारा चरितो
Vedega Janaracharito
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनरा बंधु
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनरा बंधु
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
लोके ना लोके राजीवाना
Lokena
हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया
Aha Prabhu Pura Daya Jaya More Padachaya
हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया
Aha Prabhu Pura Daya Jaya More Padachaya
देवी जास घुषुक त्रिभुवाना
Deveyas Sukhi Bhuvana
एवे जास घुषुक त्रिभुवाना
Deveyas Sukhi Bhuvana
प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना
Prabhupada Tita Pavana
जय प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा शिर प्रभु पदा
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी इति नामिने कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवाणी पाश्चात्देशतारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवाणी पाश्चात्देशतारिणे
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद
नित्यानंद
श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा
कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajagachasta Tarasatara Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sukha Hoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Godan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dan Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dan Ki Jai Anpuri Dham ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glorious to Samaveda, all glorious to Samaveda, all glorious to all glorious to Shikuru and Shikaranga, all glorious to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya. There's a Tari name. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of eternal suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to this lotus feet is the perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth of the birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya. Namaste, Saraswati.